Welcome to GovHack Digital Conference 2021. Thank you everyone who connected to our live stream today. Before we begin, let's pause to reflect on the fact that we reside on lands of the world's oldest living civilization. I pay my respects to the peoples of the indigenous nation, the traditional custodians of the lands where I'm streaming this event from. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands from where all of you are watching, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, people participating in GovHack. I pay my respect to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. Tonight, we have a presenter. It's Micah, Starkis, Director Data and Information Knowledge, and his topic is Water Information Without Borders. Micah, take it away, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the good welcome. This is I think this is the fifth GovHack I've participated in. So if I look familiar, I used to be at Transport for New South Wales. So few good years of participating in GovHack, but now I've moved on to something more important than transport, and that's water at Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. I too want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'm calling from Darkinjung land, which is the Central Coast north of Sydney, and I want to pay my respects to any elders past, present or emerging that might be joining us tonight. Now, we've already said that the topic for what we're hoping to get out of this GovHack engagement is better information across borders. I've been told that this is to give you a bit like a really big context as to where we're coming from and what we might be trying to achieve out of GovHack, but it's also not to give away what the actual challenge is. So I think I'm going to be dancing a pretty fine line about where to land that message. But just over the next probably 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to be covering a broad strategic context just to give you an idea of the problem space. Bit of a look-see at how we operate and manage water in New South Wales, and then really talking about some of the challenges. If you're interested in this challenge, some of the elements you might need to consider before we move on to the available data that's out there. Now, the challenge that, look, I'll come back to this slide later in the presentation, but for me, this is the most important message that I'll be trying to give you tonight, is that the water systems run across state borders. This photo here is of the Murray-Darling Basin, which is basically west of the Great Dividing Range, and the river systems and the groundwater that we rely upon, as you can see, go well beyond just the borders of New South Wales, and actually go, if you count the ACT as a state, across 4 states: Queensland, Victoria and New South Wales. So that's just keep that in your mind. And the other key theme that you'll be hearing out of this is that there's loads of stuff that's available, but we, broadly speaking, have a lot of drive to be more transparent with the data and information assets that we've got, but also be a bit more transparent in how we manage the water as a vital resource. Now, look, what would, although this is remote, I am still a grey-haired government bureaucrat, and what government presentation you wouldn't be having a government presentation if we first didn't start with our strategy. So this is just to make reference to the New South Wales Water Strategy. This was released earlier this year. It was put out for consultation, and it's still to be finalised, but it is available online. And look, as we go through this presentation, I'll give you little tips and tricks and things you should look out for. But the New South Wales Water Strategy really is the organising framework that'll cover the next 20 years and guide how we manage water in New South Wales, with a couple of, making clear the key drivers, and that's to get more resilience for how the water resources in the state are going to be managed over the decade. It'll address a lot of key strategic sort of challenges and opportunities about how water's managed. But really, it's setting a real guiding light for where we've got to focus our efforts now and into the long-term future. Importantly, it doesn't have it's got a statewide coverage, so it looks at the regional and metropolitan areas, as well as a lot of local strategic sort of water policies and stuff that needs to happen. It is a guiding light for a whole suite of policies. I think in total there's 12 regional policies that will sort of sit underneath this, and 2 metropolitan water strategies. But just looking at it would be a good crash course in where our thinking is for how water, the organising framework for how we're going to coordinate our water management activities. I won't go into too much detail. Things you should have a look-see in the strategies, just where the priorities lie. I won't go through this in detail because I'll make it a bit too boring for you guys. But there's 7 priorities. Building community confidence, recognising Aboriginal rights. Improve how river and floodplains and the aquifer system are managed and keep their health at a good rate. And also, focus on resilience, while making sure we do the right things. There's the right economic growth, that cities and towns are well supported, and that we're doing what we can to be innovative and meet future needs. Look, and just, little takeouts. This is something that was important for me. This is really just focusing on the principles and the key outcomes, the soft sort of outcomes that we need to deliver from the water strategy. And this is where better data and information and the use of data and information will really come to life. And that's better decision making, so we know how and when to make the right investments with data-driven, evidence-based decisions. We've got to build knowledge and confidence of the management of the water sector, through being more transparent, but more than being more transparent, making the information that is produced useful to customers so they can understand what it reaches them in the format that they need to make the decisions or get the information they need when they need it. And through that, better transparency, better access to information, we'll be able to collaborate and integrate a lot better. And I'll come back to that as a very important ingredient. The key thing there is the strategy document, which really crystallises the key outcomes that we're striving to deliver as a state. We're in government, but the water sector especially has a lot of regulations and acts. We've got the Water Management Act, and we've got a lot of regulatory frameworks in place. And those frameworks sort of control, not just how we manage water, but how anyone might be able to access water through licenses and who has a lot of rights. So just to be aware of that. If you really want to know where the key outcomes and the opportunities that we're trying to deliver against are, water, being the vital asset that it is, has a lot of, if you like, external scrutiny and a lot of reports that provide really good insight as to where better management, better recommendations as to where improvements can be made. Here's just a couple of reports. I'm not proposing you read through the nuts and bolts, but just key takeaways that there's been Australian Competitor and Consumer Commission inquiry into the water markets. Key thing being, I'm sure a lot of you are new to water. The allocation of water and licenses means it's a tradable commodity. But there's been lots of inquiries to recommend how that, it's like a financial market in effect. And there's lots of goodness in the ACCC report about how to enhance markets for better traceable water rights and better operations, and importantly, better transparency. There's a first flush report. If you don't know, first flush is when they release a lot of water after rains, when the river system's full. And there's a lot of recommendations there, a lot about being transparent about how the decisions are made and how to better communicate with customers. The ministers across the states meet regularly to discuss how the states can collaborate together. Again, a key tenet is that collectively we've got to be more transparent and open with our data and get better information to customers as they need it. And loads of other reports. There's reports on social and economic conditions. So if you do come up with good ideas, the key message for us is, we're going to give you a challenge, but if you can see great opportunities or a great idea, we're right and happy to receive what you've got. Now in New South Wales, there's plenty of work underway. There's flood basin projects, work on mines, different large scale infrastructure projects that are underway. Key thing to take out of this is that west of the Great Dividing Range, the river system, the basin that I talked about, all the rivers are now interconnected. It's a network that can be controlled and regulated with flows. So it's all connected, almost like an electricity grid now, which means that better information, better decision making can actually have a material effect on interventions to get water to where it's needed. Again, one of the other key takeaways when you get in your head in the space to think about what information would be better, would help us manage water better, that there are two types of, broadly speaking, two types of water assets that we focus on, and that is surface water, which is water on the surface, like our rivers and estuaries. And there's also groundwater, which is the subterranean aquifer water resource, which is accessed by bores getting drilled into the ground. So just remember that as a broad concept. I will talk a little bit more around surface water, only because it's easier to conceptualize. But those two big water networks in that basin are pretty much the same, and they do span the whole cross-state divides. And within the regulations, there are water sharing plans. So for me, the key thing here is that the plans enable the ability to share water between different regions. So there's agreements and processes and mechanics that allow water to be transferred and shared through the different areas managed by these different plans. It is guided by the broader strategy, but it is at the mechanic that allow that ability to modify and flow where water goes to. Now, when you're thinking about this as well, this is where I hope over the next couple of slides, what starts to come through is the growing complexity that put us in the situation where we are today and where the opportunity might lie. But within New South Wales, west of the Great Dividing Range, there are actually 3 New South Wales agencies that manage the water resource and its allocation. That is DPI, or the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. That's where I work, which sets the policies and the rules that guide how water should be managed. Then we've got an agency, Water New South Wales, which is an independent state-owned corporation, which actually implements the rules, or if you like, operates the water system and provides the services to the customers. And then we've got NRA, which is the Natural Resource Access Regulator, which basically enforce that the rules are being followed. You know, if you think about rivers and pumps taking the water out, they're making sure that people aren't taking any more than they're required. They're also providing assurance that the agencies are operating as they should be. But together, we make sure that the water system works as it should. But, you know, that's 3 agencies in one state. There are also agencies for each of the states and with similar operating parameters. And then at the federal level, we've got national organisations like the Bureau of Meteorology that come into play. We've got the Murray-Darling Basin Authority as well, which spans that whole basin and covers the river system for that. Through the entire scope. So key message, there's a lot of organisations that have a lead role in ensuring that water is managed appropriately right through the system. But as you go through the journey, like having a centerpiece that covers the entire network is an area for improvement. Not saying that's the challenge, but you'll see it's very difficult to find an information asset or a data set that covers the entire river system. And hopefully, now I'm turning to the different data assets and information products that are actually available that I'm sure all of you will be interested in. Now, first and foremost, this is, I'll take a New South Wales government view of the world. So we share the data, our open data, through a variety of different channels. So these are the flagship New South Wales data sharing portals. So we've got the Department of Customer Service Spatial Collaboration Portal. We've got the SEED portal, which is actually a data sharing portal for my cluster, DPI, Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. But also you'll find our data that's on Data NSW and API NSW. So we ensure that we do share our data, our open data, through the channels, through the portals that can be accessed by everyone. So that first and foremost. Brace yourself. So I think this is me going through all the different assets that you might want to look at and different portals where you might be able to get more information. I think I've got 5 slides. I won't go through them all individual. So across other New South Wales water agencies, you'll find there's a range of different dashboards made available by us and Water New South Wales to share different reports and the underlying data on occasion that might be available. So the type of information and data you'll find here is metered usage type for regulated for the rivers, allocation information, all the data that's collected by Water New South Wales for surface waters and flows and groundwater levels, storage levels, volumes. It's all available through these portals. A couple of these are very customer facing. So if you went to the Water Insights portal, you'll start to see some visualizations of how New South Wales represents the data in a useful format for customers to be able to interact with and use. At a national level, what do we got here? I haven't even counted these. There's 7 different sort of information and data sharing portals. The Bureau of Meteorology, BOM, they really have no shortage of data that is available on the different portals that you can go to. Same as the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. A lot of data sharing portals, a lot of information product portals. Oh, that was a good transition. I didn't know I did that. The other states, Victoria. These are all Victorian assets. I'm sure this information will be shared afterwards. So there's URLs there that you'll be able to access it. You'll be able to see the different data assets. And just to click through, there's more. There's no shortage. So while the sector's being asked to be more transparent, we actually have no shortage of data and information that is actually available. But yeah, I think where we think the problem space radiates around is how does that information and data get presented or brought together? More importantly, these disparate, separate data sets, how can they be brought together into something meaningful to achieve some outcomes that improve our water sector? Now this is the closing slide. This is really a call to arms. There's no shortage of data out there. There's a real willingness to take on new innovations and new thinking in a space that's been managed as well as it can be for a long time. But we all know that the reality of the situation. Luckily we've come through the drought of the millennium. But we really need incisive, insightful new innovations and thinking to be able to drive how we better manage water into the future. And that's where it's over to GovHack. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.